When my brother Nate called me that night, his voice was low but urgent. It was around 9:30 p.m., and I had just gotten home from a brutal shift at the hospital. I remember I was still in my scrubs, sitting on the edge of my bed, one shoe on, one off, when he said the words, "Look, Allie, I wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate, but we might lose the house." My fingers stilled, shoe half off. I knew this tone. Nate only ever called when he wanted something, but he was my brother, and family helps family, right? The next week, I sat in their half-finished kitchen, the air still heavy with the smell of drywall dust and ambition. Nate's wife, Kelsey, was pouring wine like we were celebrating. Their 3-year-old was napping upstairs, and their dog, a massive golden retriever, barked intermittently at the window like it didn't trust me. I remember Kelsey's exact words. "You'd be investing in your own future, Allie. This house is a family asset. Think of it as part of your legacy, too." Legacy. That word hooked me. I had spent the last decade patching people back together while my own life was quietly unraveling. 2 breakups, 1 failed engagement, mounting student debt. The idea of having a share in something solid, something permanent, something ours, made my stomach flutter. So I agreed. Over the next 9 months, I sent money, not in a lump sum, but piece by piece. $7,000 for foundation work, $3,200 for a new HVAC unit, $14,500 for kitchen and bathroom renovations, and another $5,000 toward landscaping and the deck. I never got it in writing. Kelsey said it made things feel too transactional. Nate promised they'd update the deed once they refinanced. Said it was just a timing thing, and I believed them. Because I wanted to, I moved into the upstairs guest room once the renovations were mostly complete. I still kept my apartment, but with night shifts and long commutes, staying at their place a few nights a week made sense. They said they loved having me there. Said it made the house feel full. I helped with groceries, babysat, paid for their anniversary dinner. Sat on the floor watching Netflix while folding their laundry because Kelsey was too exhausted. I didn't mind. Not at first. But it changed. It started with little things. My towel disappeared from the bathroom. The Wi-Fi password was changed without anyone telling me. My name wasn't included on the family group Christmas photo card. When I brought it up, Nate laughed awkwardly and said, "Come on, Allie. You're not really family. Not like that." That stung, but I smiled and let it slide, until I came home from work one Friday night and found all my things boxed on the porch. It had rained earlier. The cardboard was damp, not soaked, not ruined, just enough to feel disrespectful. I stood there in my hospital scrubs, my ID badge still clipped crookedly to my chest, looking down at my life in 7 boxes, clothes crammed haphazardly, my stethoscope shoved next to a bag of hair products, a picture of Mom, the last one we ever took before. She passed, face down in a cracked frame. There wasn't even a note. Just silence from inside. No porch light. No explanation. I knocked. Once. Twice. 3 times. Nothing. Finally, the door opened a few inches, just enough for Kelsey's overly Botoxed face to peek out. Her lips were pinched tight, and she didn't even pretend to look sorry. "We just need space right now. It's been too crowded with you always here." I blinked. Crowded? Kelsey, I paid for that guest room to even exist. She didn't flinch. "Well, we're grateful, but things change. We're trying for another baby. And honestly, we need the privacy." I stared at her. Where's Nate? Kelsey sighed and leaned further into the crack. He didn't want to be the bad guy. And with that, she closed the door in my face. I sat in my car for an hour after loading everything into my trunk, the steering wheel slick with rain in my hands. I didn't cry, not yet. My jaw ached from how tightly I was holding it together. Then my phone buzzed. A Venmo request from Kelsey. $68.99 cleaning fee. The caption read, "Since we're getting the carpets redone, no hard feelings." I stared at the screen, unmoving, as if I could erase it just by sheer disgust. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not like glass, but like ice. Cold and slow and deep. It wasn't rage, it wasn't sadness. It was something sharper, something focused. I wasn't going to fight with them. That's what they expected. They wanted a meltdown so they could label me dramatic or emotional or unstable. No. They were going to learn something new about me, about what I was capable of when I didn't make noise. I was going to disappear from their lives, and then return like a flood. I didn't answer texts. I didn't argue. I let the silence stretch and fill with guilt, or at least I hoped it did. Instead, I focused. I pulled up my bank statements, cross-referenced every payment I'd made toward their mortgage company, contractors, and materials. Luckily, I had insisted on transferring directly to service providers. I wasn't stupid, just trusting. Nearly $32,000 and every dollar traceable. I booked a meeting with a real estate attorney the next morning. Her name was Denise Chang, and she wore glasses with gold rims and lipstick that didn't move when she spoke. By the end of our consultation, she had 2 words for me: unjust enrichment. Apparently, since I'd significantly contributed to the increased value of the property without compensation or equity, I had a legal basis to claim interest. Especially if we could prove the house's value had risen because of my funds. But Denise wasn't done. "We don't start with lawsuits," she said calmly. "We start with pressure. Leverage. We make them feel the possibility of loss before we even step into court." I liked her instantly. That night, I opened a private Instagram account. I started a timeline. Before and after photos of the house, invoices, screenshots, messages, everything. I followed every local realtor in their zip code, contractors, Nate's colleagues, Kelsey's mom's bridge club. No caption, just facts. I didn't have to say a word. The next morning, Nate called. I didn't answer. I waited 2 more days. Then I sent him a text. "You kicked me out, but the house doesn't belong to you." "Not completely. We'll let the law decide how much of it is mine." And I added the cherry on top. "I hope your next baby likes courtrooms." The silence from Nate's end lasted exactly 3 days. Then came the text. Not from him, but from his wife. "Kelsey, are you seriously trying to sue your own family? Over helping us?" Followed by another. "Kelsey, we let you live here. For free. You're lucky we didn't charge rent." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded both messages to Denise. She responded within the hour. "Perfect. Screenshots like these prove they see you as a contributor, not just a guest. Let them keep talking." So I waited. And sure enough, they kept digging. I'd underestimated how fast guilt can turn into defense, and how defense can rot into arrogance. Kelsey posted a photo of her standing on the renovated deck I paid for. Holding a glass of wine and smiling under fairy lights, I installed myself. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to protect your peace even if it means cutting out the drama. Boundaries. No regrets. I didn't comment. But the next day, 2 of her mom group friends unfollowed her. One of them DM'd me privately and said, "I didn't know you helped them build that." That's wow. Just wow. I smiled. The story was leaking, quietly, slowly, like a hairline crack in their perfect little drywall. Meanwhile, Denise had me gathering more. Home value estimates, contractor testimonies, screenshots of payments, anything I could trace. They will try to pretend none of it mattered. "We're going to show that you made the house what it is," she said. At her advice, I also requested a title search report. And that's when I discovered something even more damning. Nate had never refinanced the house. He lied. The deed was still in both his and Kelsey's names, but their mortgage was modified through a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, opened just 6 months prior, with my renovations included in the appraisal. In short, they'd used my upgrades to borrow more money, then kicked me out the same month. I stared at the document in disbelief. They didn't just take my help, they leveraged it, profited from it, and tossed me out like a worn-out tool the second they were done. Denise's tone changed after that. This isn't just unjust enrichment anymore. This borders on fraud, depending on how they disclosed your contributions during the HELOC process. If they claimed it as their own capital investment, that's, well, let's just say we can pressure the bank too. The next week, a formal letter arrived at Nate and Kelsey's house, sent by Denise's office. It was calm, professional. A full itemized account of my financial input with legal claims outlined in clean, terrifying language. It didn't demand repayment. It offered options: equity interest, forced sale, civil suit. They had 14 days to respond. On day 5, Nate called. He sounded tired, older, like something had cracked in him. "Allie, come on. We were just trying to get on our feet." I said nothing. It's not like we didn't appreciate it. Still nothing. It was Kelsey's idea to change the locks. I didn't even know until afterward. That made me blink. "You're blaming your wife?" He sighed. "I'm not blaming anyone. I don't want this to turn into something ugly." Too late for that. I finally replied, my voice cold and steady. "It turned ugly the moment you stood behind that doubter and didn't open it." Then I hung up. By the time the story reached Aunt Marianne, who had raised Nate and me after Mom passed, it was already public. No, not viral. Not yet. But enough. Enough that the Bridge group murmured. Enough that my cousin Marcy texted me a string of question marks. Enough that Kelsey's Instagram account switched to private, and her Pinterest board for Dream Nursery 2.0 suddenly vanished. But the moment it really sank in, when the realtor who'd once tried to woo Kelsey for a backyard transformation, success story, DM'd me asking if I'd be willing to talk about my investment angle. I politely declined, but it told me everything. They weren't just ashamed, they were nervous. Denise filed a lis pendens, a notice of pending legal action that effectively froze any attempt to sell or refinance the property. Kelsey went ballistic. "You're ruining our credit. We can't even finish the second-floor nursery now." I didn't reply. What I did do was send a polite follow-up letter to the HELOC bank, including notarized documentation of all funds I'd contributed toward the renovations used to appraise the house's value. Denise explained it cleanly. They used your money to inflate the home's equity, then secured a line of credit on top of it. If the bank had known those improvements weren't funded by the homeowners, that's a major disclosure issue. They'll care. A lot. I imagined Kelsey opening that letter. Glass of wine in hand, hair tied up, mid-scroll on Instagram, and then, the moment her hand froze, I wondered what kind of sound she made. A few nights later, I got a text from Nate. Nate, she wants to talk to you. Like in person, just the two of you. I read it twice, then replied with one word. Me. Why? The response was fast. Nate, because she knows she fucked up, and because you've got her cornered. We met at a small cafe near the park. Neutral territory. I arrived early, sat by the window, ordered chamomile tea. Kelsey walked in 10 minutes late, wearing oversized sunglasses and a black blazer like she was dodging paparazzi. She sat across from me, didn't order anything, and didn't remove the glasses. You win. That's how she started. I raised an eyebrow. Is that what you think this is? She shrugged, lips pressed tight. You were supposed to be family, but the moment things didn't go your way, you lawyered up. That's not love, Allie. The laugh that escaped me surprised even myself. Love? You locked me out of a house I paid to build. She flinched. Just slightly. You didn't just kick me out, Kelsey. You erased me. Out of your little photo cards. Out of your family dinners. Out of the future you promised when you held out that wine glass and said legacy. The table went quiet. For the first time, she looked almost regretful. I didn't think you'd fight back. There it was. The confession. Not of guilt, but of underestimation. Of assuming I would stay small, stay quiet, stay grateful for breadcrumbs. I know, I said. That's the only reason you thought you could win. She asked what it would take to make this go away. I let the silence stretch. Then I told her the new number Denise had calculated. One that included increased home equity, inflation, labor value, and interest. A fair number. A precise one. And I told her if they didn't settle, I'd go forward. With the lawsuit. Kelsey's face was blank. But behind the glasses, I saw it. The flicker of something unraveling. Not rage, not sadness. Fear, not of me, but of what happens when a woman you discarded stops being useful and starts being unmovable. By the time I left the cafe that afternoon, I knew two things for sure. Kelsey was scared, but not sorry. Nate was trying to play both sides. Again. I wasn't surprised. That was his specialty. Staying just close enough to the fire to feel important, but far enough that he could always claim he didn't light the match. Still, by that weekend, Denise received a call from their new lawyer. Yes, they hired one. Apparently, Kelsey didn't trust Denise. Said she seemed biased. Said she smiled too much while quoting damages. Their attorney was a man named Griffin Cole. Polished, pushy, and far too confident for someone walking into a house made of glass. Denise handled him like a cat playing with a mouse. She kept her voice pleasant, but cut his arguments off at the knees. We'd be open to negotiation, he said at one point. Of course, Denise replied. Once your clients accept that the renovation wasn't charity, it was capital investment, and that we have documentation proving it. We gave them 10 business days to decide. Meanwhile, I kept quiet. No social media, no dramatic stories. No cryptic posts, but word kept spreading. Apparently, Kelsey had tried to list a few nursery items on Facebook Marketplace, expensive ones, and someone commented under it. Are you selling what your sister-in-law paid for? She deleted the post. Then her mom called my phone. I ignored it, and later left a voicemail saying, "I know things got messy, dear, but you're still family. Let's not drag this out." Funny how people who stood silent during the betrayal always found their voices during the fallout. On the 8th business day, Denise received a formal settlement offer. It wasn't the full amount we requested, but it was close, $26,000. They framed it as a gesture of goodwill, not an admission of guilt. But it included language that acknowledged substantial financial contribution, resulting in increased property value. That sentence was everything. That sentence was power. I had a choice. Take the money and walk away quietly. Or decline, take it to court, and potentially win more, at the cost of time, emotion, and war. I sat with the decision for 3 days. Thought about the hours I worked to earn that money. Thought about the night I found my photo frame cracked on the porch. Thought about the way Kelsey's voice dripped with entitlement as she said, "We just need space right now." But also, I thought about freedom, about peace, about moving forward without letting this house, or these people, anchor me to resentment. And finally, I gave Denise the answer, accept, with one condition. The condition? A written public acknowledgement, just one, to be published on their neighborhood's community Facebook group. A short message. No drama, just this. We want to thank Allie Carson for her generous contributions toward our home's renovation. Her support was a major part of making our dream possible, and we are grateful. It wasn't spite. It was restoration, a reclaiming of my name, a removal of the erasure, and proof in writing that I hadn't imagined my worth. They stalled for 2 more days before they finally posted it. It went live on a Thursday morning. I was sitting on my apartment balcony, coffee in hand, when I saw the alert pop up on my phone. Nate and Kelsey Thompson posted in Whispering Pines HOA group. The post wasn't long, barely 3 lines, but it was exactly what we agreed to. We want to thank Allie Carson for her generous contributions toward our home's renovation. Her support was a major part of making our dream possible, and we are grateful. No edits, no weasel words, no passive-aggressive emojis, just clean acknowledgement. Within minutes, the comments started. Most were polite. That's lovely. How generous of her. Didn't realize she helped that much. Wow. Grateful families are strong families, but a few cut deeper, likely from neighbors who had seen the boxes on the porch that night. Wish she was treated as generously as she gave. Kicking someone out after they paid. Yikes. And one from Mrs. Lennox, the retired attorney who lived 4 houses down. The law always favors transparency. Good move. I almost laughed. I never responded to the post. I didn't like it, comment on it, or acknowledge it in the group. But I took a screenshot, printed it, framed it. Not because I needed a trophy, because it reminded me what happens when you stop begging to be seen, and instead, make yourself undeniable. 2 weeks after the settlement closed, the money hit my account. I transferred half to my savings. The other half, I used it to put a deposit down on a quiet condo on the north side of town. Big windows, no roommates, all mine. When the agent handed me the keys, she said, "You're lucky. This place went fast." The last bidder backed out suddenly. I just smiled. Meant to be. A month later, I ran into Nate at the grocery store. He looked older. Not bad, just worn. Like a man who had been humbled, but hadn't yet figured out what to do with the lesson. He saw me in the produce aisle, holding a lemon. "Hey," I nodded. "How's the new place?" he asked, glancing at my cart like he was looking for clues. "It's peaceful." He scratched the back of his neck. "I miss having you around." I let that sit in the air. Then I replied, soft but clear, "You miss what I gave, not who I was." He didn't argue, just nodded once and stepped away. Back in my car, I sat for a moment, watching people move through the lot, pushing carts, unloading trunks, laughing into phones. And I let myself feel something unexpected. Relief. Not revenge. Not rage, just freedom. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the helper, the backup, the emergency fund, the doormat. I was my own anchor. They could keep their house. I had reclaimed something far more valuable. Myself. 3 months passed. Enough time for the gossip to settle, for the whispers to fade, for people to stop choosing sides. But not long enough for Kelsey. Because what I didn't know, what no one told me until much later, was that the post, the payout, and the settlement had all left her standing on a social rug that had been quietly pulled from under her. Her curated image of the perfect suburban mom, cracked. Her status in the PTA board, suspended pending community review. Apparently, some of the other moms didn't appreciate her redefining the term family values. I didn't revel in it. But I didn't stop it either. It all came back to me one crisp Saturday morning when my coworker Bree handed me her phone while we sat sipping oat lattes at the corner cafe. "Hey, is this the house you helped renovate?" I looked. It was a YouTube video titled 600K Suburban Home Tour. But the real story is wild. It was posted by a local real estate vlogger who did house walkthroughs mixed with neighborhood gossip. I knew she was connected to the area but didn't know she'd taken this much interest. The thumbnail had Nate and Kelsey's house, fresh paint, polished porch, the deck I funded shining in the golden hour. I clicked play. The camera panned lovingly across the kitchen I'd designed. The marble, counters I chose, even the light fixture I insisted on, the one Kelsey had called too modern, until her Instagram followers loved it. Then came the twist. "Here's where the story gets interesting," the vlogger said with a smile. "It turns out a relative of the homeowners actually paid for much of the renovation, and then got kicked out." I blinked. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. In the comments, viewers were already piecing it together. Didn't this family post some weird thank you thing on Facebook a while back? Oh, is this the sister-in-law they tried to erase? Imagine kicking out the person who built your kitchen. The video had over 200K views. I sent Denise a heads up. She replied, "Nothing actionable. No names, no defamation." But the optics? Delicious. A few days later, I got a private message from the vlogger. "Hi, Allie. I'd love to talk, totally. Off the record. I just think your story deserves to be heard. Properly." I didn't reply. Not then. Instead, I clicked over to her latest video. In the comments, someone had posted, "Sometimes the ones you kick out come back stronger than the house you stole." It had 2.3K likes. I read it 3 times, and I realized something. This wasn't just about money. It never had been. It was about narrative, voice, visibility. And for once, my voice was louder. 6 months later, I was sitting on the rooftop of my new condo watching the sunset burn gold across the skyline. My new world was quieter. No slamming doors, no creaking floors above my head, no babies crying at 3 a.m. There was just me, the distant hum of traffic, and the kind of peace that only shows up after a war you never wanted to fight, but absolutely refused to lose. Hadn't heard from Nate in a while. Not since the video passed 1 million views and people started side-eyeing them at the local grocery store. Not since Kelsey tried to get the video removed, and the vlogger responded with a calm, airtight statement about the power of public spaces and verifiable truth. The truth, that was what stung them most. Because they built their home on my foundation, and I took the blueprint back. A letter arrived that week. Real envelope, real stamp. Handwritten return address from my Aunt Marianne. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a folded note and a check for $200. Allie, it read, I don't have much, but I want to say sorry for staying quiet. I saw what they did. I said nothing. I regret that. Please accept this as a small way of saying, I see you now. It wasn't about the money. It was the first apology I received that didn't come with conditions or manipulations. I placed the check in a drawer and held on to the note. Not for justice, not for sentimentality, but as proof that silence, too, leaves receipts. I never responded to the vlogger. I didn't want to become someone's cautionary content. My revenge didn't need a platform. It had already played out in full color, without me lifting another finger. Still, I started getting DMs from strangers, young women, men, even older folks, who found the story through a breadcrumb trail of shared posts and quiet rage. I gave everything to my sister, too. Then she blocked me after the wedding. They said I could stay for a few weeks, then change the locks while I was at work. Thank you for not staying quiet. I thought I was the only one. That, more than anything, made me feel whole again. A year after everything, I passed by Nate and Kelsey's house. I was on the way to an appointment and turned down that street on instinct. It looked the same. Trimmed hedges, fresh paint. Kelsey's flowers lined up neatly along the porch. But something was different. It was listed. For sale. I pulled over, rolled the window down, watched a couple step out of a silver SUV and walk toward the open house sign. Kelsey stood near the front door, arms folded tightly, fake smile in place. Nate was inside, talking to the realtor with the familiar strain of someone trying to sound more confident than they felt. I didn't get out. I didn't need to. They had built their dream on betrayal. And now, they were selling it off. One carefully worded listing at a time. Later that night, I walked into my condo, poured a glass of wine, and stood by my full-length window as the city exhaled beneath me. I wasn't bitter, wasn't even angry anymore. What I felt was something cleaner, triumphant, because they thought they could use me. They thought kindness was weakness. They thought I wouldn't fight. What they didn't count on was that I'd win.